All right. So I got a question today. Did Putin blame Poland for World War II?
Of course.
All right. Questions like this and many more will be answered on today's You Can't Make This Shit Up episode. Hello.
Yes, hello and good morning. Russian President Vladimir Putin utilized an interview with Tucker Carlson, which you may or may not have been one of those 18 million people to watch it, to propagate views on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, criticize the US, and justify media crackdowns. According to many outlets, Carlson offered minimal pushback, allowing Putin to spread propaganda unchecked. How dare he? Putin portrayed confidence in Ukraine while pushing anti US rhetoric. Notably, Carlson requested the release of detained journalist Evan Gershkovich. I think I got that.
Yeah.
Met with Putin's denial and accusations. The interview was exclusively covered in Russian media, showcasing Putin's manipulation of the narrative. I wonder why Russian media would be plastering this interview. Critics argue Putin used Carlson's platform to influence U.S. foreign policy. I, Angelina, and
Danielle.
give our insightful perspective and an interesting history lesson. Let's go.
All right.
Well, this interview, to me, at least showcases just how uneducated our generation is in the US. We don't understand the historical context that may or may not have led to the invasion of Ukraine. So, to make this portion a little bit more digestible, if you haven't seen the interview, Putin gives a huge history lesson, at least for around 30 minutes of the interview. This is not going to be a 30-minute show. So, we want to give you guys a little bit of the historical context, at least according to Putin, not according to us,
Nope.
and briefly discuss why Putin may or may not have invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
All right, Danielle.
All right. So, to understand in Putin's perspective as to why he invaded Ukraine, he gives us like two main reasons I would really say that he did this. I'm saying these are his words, not ours. But
Don't cancel us.
to understand it a little bit more, we have to go into a history lesson, but not the 20-minute one that he gave us starting back in the 8th century. We can start in 2014. So, to be clear, we have to talk about and understand that Russia has a free trade zone and open borders with Ukraine. So, his whole thing is if Ukraine and I think it was Georgia, they got the opportunity to join NATO in 2008, but that was taken away. Whole big thing, whatever. But his whole thing was if Ukraine joins NATO, open borders with Europe for them. That means open borders with them with Europe for Russia. So he didn't want to do it, obviously, because he wants NATO to stay west and not expand east, which is another huge point he makes. But so Russia ultimately wants to close these custom borders with Ukraine, which Yanukovych, which was the president of Ukraine at the time in before the 2014 election, tells the EU they have to think about it. And in Putin's word, he had good relations with Yanukovych, apparently. But this caused the West and NATO to push a third election and another candidate to presidency. So he also believes the CIA were involved in there, which
Dun dun dun.
not backing up the CIA or anything. But yeah, this is the first reason he says that he invades Ukraine was this coup, as he phrases it, a coup, to push another presidential candidate to Ukraine that would be more Western and towards Europe again. So that was the first one. So we also know of the war in Donbass, which was in 2014 when, where is it? Let me find my notes. A Russian militant group, forgot the guy, but it was huge. It was televised, well, not televised, but covered in US News 2s. They seized Slaviansk and Ukraine's military launched operations on them. So Russia says in Putin's interview that they had to back the brothers in faith. So the war began between Russia and Ukraine there. So jump to 2019 when Zelensky becomes president. He says he will not honor the Minsk agreements, which ultimately were made to stop the war in Donbass. So this is another reason Putin believes he was right to invade Ukraine. And as I said, these Minsk agreements ended the war in Donbass with mediation from France and Germany. They agreed to a ceasefire, withdrawal of weapons, and release of war prisoners. So he says no, and Putin's like, all right, I guess I got to go in there.
And defend Mother Russia.
Oh, gosh. All right. So there's the first. Okay. So I guess there's kind of 3 reasons he believes he invaded Ukraine. So it was the war in Donbass and the Minsk agreement, Zelensky, and all of that stuff. The coup of the third presidential candidate, and then denazification. So Putin goes on for about 20 minutes of this interview talking about denazification all over the world, which is Russia's goal and the prohibition of all kinds of neo-Nazi movements. So he says Ukraine's identity was built upon some people who collaborated with Hitler, saying that they have statues in their country and everything. I don't necessarily know or agree because I don't really believe Putin. I don't know if we should ever believe Putin, but he says that this was one of the main reasons too.
Well, one of the things is that Putin, now this is actually correct, that he the whole neo-Nazi conspiracy is actually correct. And they actually even showcased it in our American media, talking about the far right extreme neo-Nazis. So that part I will give the point to Putin.
Which, of course, none of us want neo-Nazis in this world.
Absolutely.
But we do have to point out and call out Canada a little bit in the fact that Zelensky and the entire Canadian Parliament honored a Nazi veteran who served in the SS troops. The president of Canada, or the prime minister of Canada, he had to actually release a press release saying that he apologized towards all the Jewish groups in Canada and basically everyone, because not only was this so wrong in ways, I just turned off the mic again, but they televised it. So there's videos of Zelensky and the entire Canadian Parliament standing in a round of applause, applauding a Nazi veteran. So, yeah. And Putin makes this a huge point, as he mentioned it multiple times in the interview, plus saying that he's Orthodox and that's a huge part in how he runs his country. So let's go into that a little bit.
So I am a proud Christian woman. And this saddens me because, people hear about people like Putin, for instance, saying that they are an Orthodox Christian. And this is why many people have rejected the teachings of Jesus Christ, because we are promoting this watered down version of Christianity in the Western world. And with Putin's actions, I would question whether or not he's truly saved or not. Most importantly, does he even know the concept of salvation itself? I also want to pose the question to Christians and Putin himself, what scriptures in the Bible justify his killings of the masses? I'm just going to put that out there. And the reason why I want to pose these questions to you is because I know that at times in our world, we don't hear about our politicians talking about religion. We don't hear them talking about Jesus Christ. And so it's very tempting whenever you do hear one. It's very tempting to be deceived by them. And I don't want anyone to be deceived, especially the baby Christians out there. So if you are deceived by this, or if you were, please do not get so easily distracted by someone just saying, "Oh yes, I'm a Christian." That does not mean that they are a good person. You always have to test the spirits, as I like to say.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Thank you. So another point that you made is most liberal media outlets post that this interview is simply just MAGA propaganda. And to a certain extent, this interview was used with malicious intent, more specifically with the Russian government. The Russian government is using this interview as clout, to put it like how the Gen Zers would say, to show how much American loves them. Oh, look at us. But it's so ironic because they're ignoring the fact that for years and years, they have mocked our country time and time again with their media.
Yeah, and Tucker definitely did not help by walking into their grocery stores being like, "Wow, America sucks."
Exactly.
Did not help that perspective at all.
Exactly. And many criticized them, and even criticized the right for that, because this made the right look stupid. Now, I am going to jump on Tucker's side here, because I can understand where he was coming from. Now, I mean, I'm going to be honest here. I don't think that Tucker has ever been grocery shopping. I really don't believe
He
that.
needs
I
to
mean,
go
you
to an
think about
Aldi's.
this, right? I really don't believe that this man has actually done grocery shopping before. He has people for that. Okay. He's a millionaire. So, whenever he was impressed by the coin, that you put the coin in the shopping cart, I mean, obviously he's never been to Aldi's, we can
Yeah.
all say that. However, I think I can kind of understand where Tucker is coming from and why he was so amazed. You see, Tucker, I believe he is a Gen Xer. He looks pretty young, I must say.
69. He was born.
Really?
Yeah.
69?
I-
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He
I
does
think
look
so.
pretty good for his age, I must say. Tucker, he grew up, during the generation of where they believed that Russia was all bad, that it was communism versus capitalism. And it would make sense that, that he would be impressed by the clean subway, that he would be impressed by certain things because he wasn't taught that Russia could live like that. Am I saying it's right? And did it do more harm than good? To a certain extent, it most likely did. However, I can still understand where he's coming from in that regards.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think him going there and doing that was just after everything being
Mhm.
said about anti-American, anti-U.S. stuff on the podcast, on the interview,
Mhm.
and saying that he just was like, he was not thinking about it.
Right.
Clearly.
Mhm.
But yeah.
And that's also another thing is, this man, he literally interviewed one of the scariest men of all time. I mean, I don't know that I would be thinking clearly after sitting down with somebody who could possibly unalive me at any second.
Yeah.
So I can sort of understand where Tucker Carlson is coming from with that. So, my question to you is, do you think that this interview did more harm than good?
Oof. I mean, in certain aspects, it definitely did more harm than good. I think it's the way that you look at it,
Right.
because to some people, like for example myself, I was always curious about why did Putin do this?
Right.
Why did he invade? What are his views on it? We got that direct answer. Now, not saying that he's not lying because
Mhm.
it's Putin, but
He's only a communist,
literally. But and then other perspectives too, you have to be like, this is anti-U.S. propaganda in a way.
Exactly.
It's glorifying. It's trying to give a reason as to why millions of civilians have died, and
Mhm.
that's just not okay at all.
It's not.
So I think it definitely. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know.
And I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I mostly think about what about the Russians?
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
live in a country where they're not allowed to have as much access to media as we are in the United States.
Mhm.
And by putting on this show, because that's essentially what it is, a show, you're only helping that narrative. You know, Putin is only going to allow you to see what he wants you to see.
Yes.
Everything
Yeah.
is an illusion. Just like in the United States, everything is an illusion.
Mhm.
So even if someone comes down and visits the United States, of course, if they only come for a couple of days, they're going to see the beauty of the United States. And there is. I love this country. However, there's also a lot of scandal in this country,
Yes, of
and it's
course.
disgusting to see.
Mhm.
And so, my final thoughts on this interview is first of all, I would like to just congratulate Tucker for even doing this interview. Most journalists have not even gotten the opportunity to do this. So,
Or
thank you
get
so
thrown
much.
in jail.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Or get thrown in jail. So,
Not released.
I really do want to just thank you for having this conversation with us and for showing us that we desperately need to have these conversations, especially among the right, because I don't want the right confusing anti-wokeism with communism. Okay.
Yeah.
Just because someone is saying your talking points, that does not mean that they have your best interests at heart.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. Good job. I
Thank
think
you.
we did that one well.
I think so too.
What now?
Well, what do you want
now?
our audience to do?
Like, subscribe, share, please.
Ring that notification bell if you haven't already.
Yes. Yep.
And with that, we are out. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Love you.